Hello everyone. I'm really glad that you're still here. Still listening. Still patiently following the stories that are not yet finished. The stories where every small detail can become a turning point. In this episode, everything no longer stops at what is happening in the present. No longer separate fragments. No longer disconnected moments. But begins to intertwine, overlap, and connect with each other in a way that is hard to recognize. Between opportunities, things that seem to be opening up ahead. Between difficulties, pressures that have never completely disappeared. And even memories from the past. Things that seem to have been buried deep, but in reality, have never truly been closed. There are things that people believe, if they just stay silent, they can ignore them. If they simply don't mention them, they can forget. But then, at some point, those very things return. Not loudly, not with any warning, but enough to make everything begin to change. The lives of Hai&Tieu in recent days can be said to have become lighter. No longer overwhelming changes. No longer lingering worries from one day to another. Everything seems to be gradually settling into a stable rhythm. A rhythm of life. Not too fast. Not too slow. But enough to make people feel at ease. Hai's work is still progressing in the direction he wants. He remains busy with meetings, discussions, plans that are becoming clearer day by day. There is no rush, no impulsive decisions, just step by step, carefully and calculated. Work relationships are maintained, expanded, and gradually form a stable foundation. From the outside, everything seems to be going well. But for Hai, he understands clearly that behind every step forward, there is preparation. And it was also during a meeting like that. A conversation that seemed to be only about work. A piece of information unexpectedly appeared. A restaurant, located not too far away. Convenient. Easy to access. And especially, with a stable flow of customers. Not a newly opened place. Not an untested model. But a place that already has a solid foundation. But what makes it different is the reason behind it. That place is being put up for transfer. Not because of failure. Not because the business is declining. But simply because the current owner no longer has enough time to continue. A reason that sounds very light, very ordinary, yet opens another door. For many people, it might just be passing information. An opportunity for someone else. But not necessarily for themselves. But for Hai, he doesn't see it that way. He doesn't just see a restaurant. He sees a possibility, an opportunity, not only to continue developing his work, but also an opportunity to create a change. A change, not for himself, but for someone else. Someone he has always quietly thought about. No need to say it out loud. No need to mention it often. But always present in his decisions. That evening, after returning home, there was no preparation. No long introduction. Hai simply shared what he knew, what he had heard, and what he was thinking. The way he spoke was the same as always. Simple. Gentle. But then, in the middle of the conversation, he asked a question. If we take over that place, would you want to try? A question that carried no pressure, no burden of responsibility. But it surprised Tiểu San, because she didn't think she would be part of such a decision. A restaurant is not something small, not a choice that can be made in just a few minutes. It is a journey, a long-term responsibility, a major change in lifestyle. Tiểu San did not answer immediately. She stayed silent. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because too many thoughts appeared at once. She thought about the present, what she is doing, what she is used to. Each day begins with familiar tasks. Going to the garden, harvesting, arranging, bringing goods to sell. A cycle that may be tiring, but clear. Not too many things beyond control. Not too many pressures from external factors. But a restaurant is a completely different story. Not just cooking, not just serving, but management. Managing people, managing costs, managing quality, and problems that can arise at any time. A gap that is not small. After a while, she softly said, I don't know if I can do it. Not a refusal, not avoidance, just a truth. A very normal truth. When facing something new, Hai didn't say more. He didn't push. He didn't try to persuade. Because he understands. Some decisions cannot be made immediately. He just gently said, as he always does, you don't have to do it right away, you can learn gradually. There are already staff there, the previous owner will guide you. Not to create pressure, but to let Tiểu San understand that if she wants, she won't have to start alone. But what made Tiểu San think the most was not those things. Not the guidance. Not the chance to learn slowly. But the fact that Hai had thought of her, had seen in her a potential that even she had never dared to imagine. An opportunity is right there. Clear. Close. Just one step forward. And everything could change. But between seeing and taking it, there is always a gap. And that gap is hesitation, unanswered questions, unspoken worries. Tiểu San is still standing there, between what is familiar and what is new, something she has never experienced. Meanwhile, in another place, a completely different story is beginning to unfold. No longer about opportunities, no longer about choices to consider, but pressure. Things that cannot be delayed. Problems that are gradually appearing. Clearer, heavier, and harder to avoid. Tiểu San's ex-husband's family, in recent days, is no longer living the ordinary life they once had. No more simple conversations revolving around daily meals. No more gentle, easygoing talks. Instead, there is a heavy atmosphere, lingering, and seemingly with no end in sight. The older brother and the younger sister, Trang, sit across from each other. The space is quiet, There aren't many words, but it is filled with unspoken weight. Their conversation is not long, not complicated, but every word spoken carries a burden. Their mother has been scammed. Something that before, even they could hardly have imagined. The initial amount was just over 100 million VND. A number that may not seem large to many people, but for their family, it was the result of years of saving. It was effort. It was hope. But everything didn't stop there. Because that money was not available cash. It was borrowed. And not just borrowed, but borrowed at a high interest rate. At first, things might still have been under control. But over time, and not easy to recover what was lost. Meanwhile, the pressure does not wait, does not stand still. It continues to weigh down on each person, especially the son. He is not only facing that debt, but also carrying other responsibilities. The car is still being paid in installments. Every month. A fixed amount. Cannot be delayed. Cannot be skipped. And now, added to that, is the debt from his mother. Alone. He has to manage everything. There are not many choices. Not many ways. Only to keep going. Keep working. Keep trying. And keep carrying the burden. Meanwhile, Trang, the younger sister, is standing at another turning point. A turning point with a completely different meaning. She is about to get married. A new beginning. A new life. A new journey. The person beside her is Tone. The two of them are preparing together. Not anything grand. Not distant plans. Just very practical things. Looking for a place to live. A house. Not too big. Not too luxurious. Just enough. A place to begin. A house costing around 3 million VND per month is considered suitable. Within their means. Suitable for their situation. Not abundant. But not too difficult either. In one conversation, Trang chose not to hide. Not to avoid. She told Tone everything. About the debt. About their mother being scammed. About what the family is facing. About the pressure her brother is carrying. Nothing added. Nothing reduced. Just the truth. Tone stayed silent. He didn't interrupt. Didn't react immediately. Just listened. Seriously. Fully. And then, he said, "If needed, I can help." A sentence. Not too grand. But enough to understand. Enough to see that he was willing. But Trang gently shook her head. Not because she didn't trust him. Not because she didn't need help. But because she didn't want to. She didn't want to place her family's difficulties onto someone else's shoulders. Even if that person was about to become her husband. She understands that each person has their own responsibilities. And what her family is facing is not something she can easily share. She chose to face it with her family. Not avoid it. Not depend on others. Not rely A choice. Not easy, but very clear. And it is that very choice that makes everything heavier, but at the same time, makes her stronger. Because sometimes, the hardest thing is not the problem itself, but the way people choose to face it. Amid those changes, amid stories that seem unrelated, amid people standing at very different points in their lives, another piece quietly appears. Not loudly, not in a hurry, but enough to make everything begin to shift. That is the past. The past of Hai's mother, Mrs. Thoa. Memories that seem old, that seem to have been placed somewhere very deep. A place no one speaks of anymore. A place no one wants to touch. But in reality, they have never truly disappeared. There are things, no matter how much time passes, no matter how hard people try to forget, they remain there. Simply waiting for the right moment to return. Back then, when everything was very different, when life didn't carry as much pressure as it does now, when people could still live according to their feelings, Mrs. Thoa and Mr. Trung once had a relationship. Not something fleeting, not something temporary, but a connection deep enough to make them believe it could go further. They had been together. They had moments when everything felt simple. No need to calculate. No need to worry too much about the future. Just knowing they had each other was enough. But then, life does not always follow the path people expect. When Mrs. Thoa became pregnant, a turning point occurred. A turning point that didn't just change her life, but affected many things afterward. Mr. Trung chose to leave. Not because he didn't know. Not because he didn't understand his responsibility. But because he could not accept it. He could not accept that situation. He could not accept having to stop. He could not accept changing the path he had chosen. He chose his future. Chose his education. Chose the things he believed were more important. And in that choice, he left behind a woman. A woman carrying a life inside her. A child not yet born. There were no promises. No attempts to hold on. No way to change things. Just a departure. Decisive. And cold. Mr. Trung's family also did not accept that relationship. They did not accept the woman he had chosen. They did not accept the circumstances they considered unsuitable. Their opposition was not just words. It was attitude. It was how they saw things. It was how they drew boundaries. And those very things led everything to an ending. Not an ending they chose, but an ending with no other path left. As for Mrs. Thoa, she was the one who stayed. The one who had to face everything. Despite being hurt. Despite having the option to choose another path, she still decided to keep the child. A decision. Not easy. No preparation. No support. Just herself. Alone to give birth. Alone to raise the child. No one beside her. No one to share the burden. No one to carry it with her. What she went through was not something everyone could see. Not something everyone could fully understand. The difficult days. The moments when it felt impossible to continue. The times she had to make decisions on her own. All of it happened in silence. No resentment. No complaints. No telling anyone. Just quietly living. Quietly getting through each day. But even without saying it, what she experienced is still there. Still exists. Still leaves its mark. Not in words, but in the way she lives. In the way she sees life. And in the present itself. Right now, Hai still doesn't know the full truth. What he sees, what he feels, are only small fragments. Signs. Appearing separately. Unclear. Not enough to form a complete picture. A chance meeting. A glance. Both unfamiliar. And strangely familiar. A feeling that cannot be named. Cannot be explained. Just something different. But impossible to define. All of these things are gradually appearing. Not all at once. Not in any clear order. But enough to make everything begin to change. Little by little. Small details are being pieced together. No one notices immediately. But then, there will come a moment when everything becomes clear. On one side is a new opportunity in the lives of Hai&Tieu San. A path opening up. A choice that could change the future. A step that, if taken, could lead them into a new phase. On another.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến video về câu chuyện của Hải và Tiểu San cho mọi người. Như mọi người cũng đã biết là Hải thì biết ước mơ của Tiểu San là làm đầu bếp, và anh cũng rất công nhận tài nấu ăn của cô vì cô nấu ăn rất là khéo và rất là ngon. Thì hiện tại thì Hải đang có ý định là sẽ mua lại nhà hàng để cho Tiểu San làm quản lý. Tiểu San thì còn hơi lo lắng tại vì cô thấy cái trọng trách của mình rất lớn, nhưng Hải đang an ủi cô là những người cũ ở cái nhà hàng đấy người ta còn ở lại làm, nên cô chỉ việc đến quản lý và phát triển cho anh thôi. Thì liệu tình hình tiếp theo sẽ ra sao? Liệu Hải và Tiểu San có mua và mở nhà hàng hay không? Và liệu rằng tiến trình sẽ như thế nào thì mời mọi người đón xem vào trong tập sau nhé mọi người. Còn tập hôm nay thì chỉ có tới đây thôi, và hy vọng rằng mọi người sẽ theo dõi kênh mình và chúng ta sẽ gặp lại nhau trong các video tiếp theo. Tạm biệt.